Good evening, buenas noches, and thank you for tuning in. On behalf of all of us at the locally based, independently owned bookstore, Books and Books in Miami, Florida, and in partnership with the Miami Book Fair, it's my pleasure to welcome you to a virtual evening with Corey Rosen to discuss Your Story Well Told, creative strategies to develop and perform stories that wow an audience, how to sell yourself, published by our friends at Mango Publishing Group. Corey Rosen is an actor, writer, and visual effects producer who lives in San Francisco. He is a regular host of the Moth Story Slam series in the Bay Area, and his stories have been featured on the Moth Radio Hour and the Back Fence PDX main stage. Corey began his career writing for Jim Henson Productions and Comedy Central in New York City. As an actor, Corey can be seen as a main stage company player at Bats Improv, where he improvises feature-length plays. His film credits as a VFX artist include Iron Man, Grindhouse, Ted, and The Phantom Menace. He is currently writing and directing movies for a Chinese theme park. To moderate tonight's conversation, we're joined by Mike Burns, who is a producer, director, and music supervisor with credits on more than 40 feature films in the last 10 years. Burns was born and raised in Miami, Florida, and attended New World School of the Arts. Mike began his career in Florida in film as a video producer and director of behind-the-scenes content for film studios and production companies. His feature film debut, Out of Death, starring Bruce Willis, will be released this summer. Throughout this evening's broadcast, you're invited to ask questions by using the Ask a Question feature at the bottom of the screen, and you can order your copy of Your Story Well Told from Books and Books below by pressing the green button. We appreciate each and every order and the generous donations from viewers everywhere. And now, without further ado, I'd like to welcome our guests to the virtual stage.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Is it safe to take my mask off? I don't know.
I think where you live, you're okay, but Los Angeles, no, we can't.
San Francisco, okay. You could probably go ahead and do it.
Let me just. What the hell? All right.
No one's looking. All right. Let me take.
We'll bite the bullet. We'll roll the dice and see.
Hello, Mike Burns.
Hello, Corey Rosen.
Quick question: are you getting echo feedback, or is that just me?
I'm not getting it. No,
you're not.
I'm
trying unplugging this.
A-okay to me.
Any better? Is that better? Worse?
I can lower mine a little, my speaker a little. Maybe that helps.
I think we're fine.
Corey, you may have an open window, an open tab on your computer.
You're so right. I'm watching the show and I'm in the show.
You got it?
There we go. Now I'm one Corey Rosen.
Perfect.
All right. Well, that was a perfectly imperfect way to begin this segment. So I just want to say thank you so much, Mike Burns, and thank you, Books and Books. Hello, Florida. Hello, world. Let's do this.
It's time for Your Story Well Told.
Yes, let's do this. All right. How do you want to begin, my friend? Should we talk about us a little bit?
Yeah, let's talk about how we know each other. I mean, we were bedtime cry buddies back in summer camp.
All right, let's go there.
Where our parents thought it was okay to send us away to summer camp at the young age of 9 years old.
9 years old, to send us away for practically the entire summer for 6 weeks in the Catskill Mountains of upstate New York. They sent us to theater camp. Right.
Yeah.
And Mike Burns and I met the first day of my childhood torture. This was for me. I had never really slept away from home. And I was put in a bunk bed beneath Mike Burns. I remember that.
Yeah. And I was really scared to death of falling out of that bunk bed too, because I'd never really been on a bunk bed either. And boy, oh boy, did we wet our beds with tears for the first couple of weeks.
Crying, wailing.
We were the two crybabies of the bunk, basically. And it was I think they put us in a corner so that, we wouldn't be, spreading that out,
I remember, do you remember where our bed was? I remember the window. I remember in the bunk. And there was a kid named Glenn. remember Glenn was in our bunk too, Glenn Lehrman.
Yeah. Glenn, yeah.
And Glenn had a very special status though, because his parents worked at the camp. So
Right.
Glenn never cried because he could literally run to mommy and daddy. He didn't have.
They were literally in like a little house, like 50 feet away.
50
Yeah,
feet
he
away.
had it so
So
good.
we didn't have mom and dad there. We had to just cry it out, and we had each other. And here we are. Who knows how many years later? 20, 30, 40,
Yeah.
50.
But we went on to finally acclimate and became bunk buddies for the next like 7 years or something like that. And we were constantly in the same bunk.
Yeah.
And it was like an unwritten thing. They're like, put the crybabies together.
Even at camp reunions, we would see each other. We would wear our white turtlenecks. I love that we're wearing white turtlenecks. Whoops, hover to high. How do I do that?
Yeah, and that's my blow dried hair, my blow dried beautiful locks that I
beautiful head of hair,
and my lower forehead, which I'll never get back.
Look at that amazing scarf that you're rocking there.
Yeah,
right. And then just to show that we were dramatic kids, we had a lot of faces. We had a lot of looks that we could do. This is maybe be our more commercial, theatrical, dramatic look. Yeah.
And then here we are. Foreheads doubled in size over time. It is.
5 heads. And I'm so appreciative of you supporting the book release.
Yes.
And
which I'm really enjoying. I'm absolutely enjoying so much. I've gotten so much out of it, and I love one of the things that I really love about this book is that it talks to you about story without preaching to you about how stories need to be or something like that. Like you can go in here and you can kind of take what you want from it, and then figure out in your own way how to adapt that to kind of your own style if you're thinking of storytelling. And there's just so much. You cover so many different styles, and I love that you've got the whole like improv section in there because that was a big part of our life growing up, doing improvisation. So should I fire some questions at you? I mean, let me ask you this.
Go ahead. Because here's the thing. I can ask you. I have so many questions for you too, but go ahead. Ask me.
What was the impetus? What was the impetus of this? I mean, you've been doing, theater, you've been doing improv, you've been doing all of these amazing kind of on-stage works and things throughout the years, and you've always been a theater person. You have your family, your brother's a big theater guy. Hopefully he's watching. What's up, Stevie?
Maybe my brother and your sister are together watching this right now.
Oh, are they? Okay, cool.
They could be in my imagination.
They could be. So we're really siloed in this thing. We have no idea who's watching, but it's all good. We're here and we're gonna talk. But back to the question. Tell me what because it's a big deal to write a book. I mean, for anybody. I mean, it can be a very daunting, overwhelming task. And then when you look at the book, you're like, damn, like I don't know if that's a lot of work. I don't know how you find the time to do that with everything else you do. But tell us about what I know. What was it that got you?
The muse spoke through me, and the voice opened in the chat. Oh, no, I would say in terms of like my path as a creative, as a creative artist, as a performer, has taken a lot of different routes and a lot of different appearances. I was a filmmaker, I've made films and worked in the visual effects, special effects industry for many, many years. I've always made short films and done improvisational theater, but like a lot of writers, I think when it came to putting the words on the page, I don't want to call it, writer's block, but I would say I came up with a lot of excuses to not start. I think a lot of my process when I'd start to work on something was to have something else to do. I really should clean out that closet instead of working on that thing that I want to write, because I suffered from this thing that I think a lot of writers, a lot of creators that I've talked to have, which is that the creative process can be a daunting one in the sense that I've got this idea, I want to do it, but when I start to do it, then I've done it. And then there's a thing there that is going to need shaping, is going to need help, is going to have to be critiqued or massaged. In other words, there's a lot of work to writing. And
yeah,
so
and we're also our own worst critics. So the minute you put it down, you're like, I totally suck at this. It's the first 100%. Thing you say to yourself when you do something like this.
Yeah. So what I found myself drawn towards, as I don't want to say it's as a crutch, but it was as a way of truly like just allowing myself to be creative and to try things out, was improvisational theater, where I didn't have to write it. I could just get on stage in front of an audience, or maybe in front of no audience, in front of 3 people at a coffee shop, or in a theater like at Bats Improv in San Francisco in front of 200 people, and make something up. And it was spontaneous, it was instantaneous, and it was joyful in the sense that it came out of nothing, it existed in this moment, and then we would move on to create something else later on. Storytelling kind of emerged from that for me, because there's this kind of wave of storytelling shows, things like The Moth, organizations that put on gatherings of people getting on stages and telling their stories. Those are not generally made up stories. Those are generally constructed, people's true life stories. Mm-hmm. And so really where the book came from was that I found that there was this intersection of those two worlds in my world. There was the world of making up stories in like an improvisational setting, and there was the world of storytelling, of like just telling your own stories, and needing to have both skills to be a good storyteller. Needing to be present in the moment to adapt and change your story, but also needing to understand how stories are constructed and where they come from, and understanding how an actual story can be put together. And through that, I developed my own approach to doing it, and that approach is what I put into the book. That's a very long answer to your question.
It was a great answer. I think like again, like you had this, you develop an approach, but then what was it that made you say, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna put this out into the world? Yeah. Why? What's the why? Give me the why.
So the why for me is that the book, and I don't want this to sound wrong in some way, but it was like the book, it was very easy to write this book in the end, because I had kind of constructed in my mind and my imagination this approach of how I work through these problems. And I basically boil it down, and I teach classes in it as well. So the teaching of the classes really helped to solidify the way that I discuss it and talk about it. And those 3 things are kind of like finding our ideas, like where are my stories? What are my stories? Turning off the critic when I go, that's not a good story. No one's going to like that story. So kind of finding the stories, and then shaping the stories, and finally telling those stories. And in the constructing and the writing of the book, it really was, it was a labor of love. It wasn't hard to write this book. The book was me getting to tell stories and retell stories that I had heard, that were in themselves, I think, good examples of principles that make for good stories. Something that I also really aspired to do in the writing of this book too, was to not just make it like a book of my stories, to say like, look at what a good storyteller I am, but rather to kind of open the kimono, kind of like show the process of like, here's a story and it's not perfect. And now let's look at that story. Let's see, how might we fix that story? Like, what might I do if I was coming up, if something happened? So it's just a thing that happened, but it's not really a story yet. It's just an incident. It's just an anecdote.
Right.
How do I find that thing and go like, oh, there's a story in here. There's a lesson. There's a learning, or maybe there's a flashback to another time in my life that this reminds me of. So this actually connects 2 parts of my life, the part that I'm in the story, and maybe a part that I'm going to have to draw from to learn how to deal with this moment or this situation.
Yeah.
And
I think that I do really, like, I love how you can, in some of these parts of your book, you do tell the story 3 different ways, and you can see that each way evokes a certain thing. And, some ways, one way may evoke more emotion. one way may evoke, more, more exclamative kind of version of it. And then, there's just all different ways to tell a story in it, and all there's no wrong way to tell a story, but there's definitely ways to do it that are more engaging, that can bring someone into a more state of empathy or connection with the story. And I think that's really the subtleties of that is what's really neat that you're exploring in here.
Beautifully put. Can I flip it around for a second?
Sure.
Mike Burns, for those.
And by the way, David Pogue,
yeah,
our camp counselor when we were 9 years old at that, right?
Yeah,
he was the guy who actually kind of, to tell a little story. He was the guy who kind of like took me in under his wing, and he was a really fun guy, nice guy. And I stopped crying eventually because he was giving me a lot of like TLC and friendship. And he became like my favorite counselor. And then I never saw him again for years. And then all of a sudden, like 10 years ago, he shows up as like the Mac guru, and he has his own show on TV. And I don't know if you know that.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he has like his own show and everything. And I'm like, holy! And I was trying to figure out, where is this guy? Because I always wanted to thank him.
The counselor in Lower Boys 3.
Letter.
Yeah.
Huh?
From Lower Boys 3, our counselor.
Yeah,
okay.
David Pogue. And so I wrote him a letter. I emailed him, and I told him this long letter about how, he made summer camp. That was such a sad, and it was such a, I always remember that the adult that kind of became kind of like my parent in that situation, and not thinking anything of it. But with technology, it was like the next day, it's like, oh my God, Mike, I know, totally remember, blah, blah, blah. It's so nice to hear from you, et cetera, et cetera. And, we got to reconnect like 15, I don't know. It was like, this was like probably 30 years later or something like that. So,
and did you remind him that it was basically through him that he was the one who kind of made you feel better in that?
Yeah, of course. I told him the whole story about how I'm forever in debt to you because like I you really made that experience bearable. And not only did that, but I came back the summer after that, and then I came back the summer after that. And French Woods, little plug for the Performing Arts High School Performing Arts Camp. French Woods became one of the best some parts of my life, and one of the and something that memories that I cherish. And I have him to thank for it. So it was like this really sweet letter, and then he wrote me back, and it was just really nice to be able to how technology can bring everybody back together again. So anyway,
can we talk about that story that you just told?
That was a terrible storytelling of that.
I'm not going to say it was a terrible story, but let's see.
Tell me how we could have fixed that one.
Well, not to fix it, but to look at. It's kind of like something that you talked about before, and that's kind of what we talk about in the book, is the idea that we all have these stories. So you have this beautiful connection of like a childhood memory of being at a place at a summer camp, having an adult figure, although who's probably friggin' 15 or something, but we think of that, we thought of them as these, adults, these like summer camp counselors,
18,
and you flash forward in your life to an experience where now you're both professionals, you're both successful, but yet we connect to this connection that we had as children, right? Now I appreciated that story because I know that person, I know that bunk, I know that place. And something that I would do if I was, say, retelling that story would be now for the people who are listening to you tell it, to give them a mental picture of that place you were just talking about, like set the stage of the bunk, of the smell where, I don't know, 29-year-old.
We want to do that.
That sets the tone, right? I remember the smell of that bunk. The scratchy camp-issued woolen blankets, right?
Yeah.
That would fall down from your bed onto my bed every night. And the sound of David's voice. Can you do an impression of David for me?
Oh God, no! I'm just, that would be going into brain cells that were fried a long time ago.
Okay. But like that experience, I don't know, a lot for me, a lot of the experience of telling and hearing stories is straddling this line too of like the what happens and the how it was. Because there's these things that happen. Of course, there's like the where did I get to? What's the lesson? What's the takeaway? What's the reason? Why am I telling this story? But there's also just the joy experience of being told a story, of getting the details, getting the texture, the emotion, is the color, so that when you're telling the story, you're always picturing it in your own mind, but you're allowing us then in on that. And something that I try to do in the book too is to give tools, techniques, and sort of strategies that people can take their own stories like that and then embellish them, color them, kind of water the plant and see kind of like how it flowers, because sometimes it's those little details that stick in the memory and the mind of the person who's listening. Kind of like, I wanted to pivot it a little bit, because you have spent a lot of your career prior to your incredible film debut, ladies and gentlemen, Out of Death. Now, yes, nice. I have a full-size poster. But congratulations, by the way, on the film.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
For you. Released now, streaming on demand, as well as in movie theaters around the country. But before that, you've told stories for years through music.
Through music, and also through video. I've done a lot of what we call in the business BTS, or behind the scenes, or making of films. And when you do those, you have 9 minutes or so, or 10 minutes, 12 minutes to tell this, take people on a journey of the creation of a movie and what, a little bit of behind the guts of the movie and how the movie was made, and be able to take people on that journey, of an abbreviated journey, without giving away too many spoilers, without, being too much of a self-promotion. You want to be kind of objective. And so storytelling has always been a part of my life, whether it be through video or doing, even branded videos and such. Like I've done videos where we're talking about, yogurt, but we're doing it in a way that's interesting, and about being, well, and about how you want to feel in your body, each day, and things like that.
So is that, I wanted to ask you, like, how do you find in any of those situations for a movie behind the scenes, is the story always the same, or does it depend on the story that you find when you're there filming it?
Well, what I always do is I take the film, and the film informs the kind of way that the story is told, because I take people through the films in a kind of a linear fashion, and then try to pick out the moments of the films that were special, and then kind of focus in on them through those interviews and through those things. So then when we jump into the film, you get to just jump onto the ride and then jump back and see the actor in a different place, in a different time. Maybe he's completely out of makeup and he's at his house now, or he's somewhere else. Sometimes they're on set. But I mean,
I love those. I love the ones that you make. I love that glimpse into the world of it, because it's that thing that movies are magic. They transport us into a story, and that thing of, like, you just zoom out a little bit and you're like, oh my God, look at all the people that are standing around. Like, I remember as a kid seeing those things too, and those were the things that made me go, like, I want to do that. I want to be those people standing around, or I want to be the person standing on the set, like, whatever it is.
Yeah,
they're amazing. Like, they create the story outside the story. They're like that zoom lens that pulls out and shows some of the process, but like you said, also keeps the curiosity. You don't want to give away too much.
Yeah. And
And
the funny thing with us is that this book, there's the reason really that we've reconnected for the most part, because I mean we were on different things, but I think I jumped on Facebook for a minute, saw that you had this book coming out. I was like, hey, by the way, I'm doing this and I'm trying to write other things, and I can't wait to get to read your book. And by the way, I just finished my movie, and would you like to be part of my director's cut screening tonight?
Yes.
And we ended up, and I threw you onto the Zoom for our screening, and that was just really special that you got to be. It was just because we're both putting something into the world for really kind of the first of its media for. I don't know. Do you have other books that you've published already?
I do. No. This is my first published book. I'm working on a sequel to it right now.
Yeah.
But I would say
so yours is your debut, and this is my debut, and we both kind of got to be part of each other's debut after 30-something years.
Yeah. And that's what I want to say to people who are watching, who are thinking about, like, I would like to do a thing. This will happen to you. You will make a thing, and then your old friends will find you. You'll celebrate each other's things, and honestly, it's it's amazing the way that I feel creativity sort of inspires other people's creativity, and seeing the kind of stories and the kind of things that you're doing is really inspirational, especially some of the new, I don't know if we can talk about some of the new stuff, but involving your love of music. I mean, you're a filmmaker, you're a storyteller, and you're also, you use music and you use it in Out of Death. I mean, can I ask you about that? Because that's something that I think you know more about than most people. Like, how is music a storytelling device?
Well, when I first moved out to LA, it was really just all about music. I wanted to come out here, produce music, make music, do music, and I set up a little studio in Los Angeles, in a little neighborhood in West Hollywood, and got the opportunity to work with people and have projects just kind of take off that I never thought they would. And it was a beautiful thing to come into LA. I remember when I first came here, for the first time I saw on the walls, it said creative space for release. It's a creative space. I've never heard of that term before. In Miami, I don't know if they're using it in Miami. You guys in Miami would tell me now, but I grew up in Miami. I grew up in Kendall, and we never had creative spaces. We just had, offices, So when I came here, I thought I was so fascinated by those signs that said creative space. I was like, this is such a cool thing. But anyway, I found a little creative space studio, made music. And for years, I did a lot of music. And then eventually I got into publishing, and then one of my best friends from childhood as well, from Miami, was producing a lot of movies, independent movies. And he said to me, hey, you know what? You've got access to a lot of music. Why don't you music supervise my movies? And, that's where it started. And so I got to then kind of foray into music and film for music. And then it just kind of evolved. And after doing that, on somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe like 25 movies now, I saw a lot of directors. I saw a lot of people doing their thing. I also worked on a lot of behind the scenes for these movies as well. So I got to see the process. And eventually I just got the bug. I said, you know what? I think I'm ready to try this now. It's something that I want to do. And so, it took several years from that point on to actually land it, because like you said, movies are magic and they're miracles when they happen. And any movie you're able to have the opportunity to direct is a gift. It takes so much to get one movie going. But when I did get my movie going, I thought to myself, well, I could hire a composer for this movie. But like, what if I gave it a crack? Like, what if I tried to do something a little bit outside of my comfort zone? And I've done so much music for movies that I felt like, I must be doing something right. Like, they haven't fired me yet. So I'm like, I should have pretty good intuition around what I'm trying to do. And then I decided, well, I need to definitely do this with somebody else, because I want to co-compose. I want to work with somebody more experienced and who I have a good trust with. And what I'll say about being able to storytell with music was, what was so amazing about making this movie and being able to score it was that it was another set of colors on a palette of my storytelling. It was another brush that I was able to add to the page, to the screen. Another way to be able to heighten moments, to create nuances, to create suspense. All of those things were really key things in what I was, what I was trying to deliver as my vision. So music, fortunately, I was able to have the ability to do that. And I said, you know what? All these directors hire composers. If I'm the director, I guess I can hire myself.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and it was great.
I think what you're talking about is kind of similar to what I was saying before about, like, kind of painting the corners of the canvas, of like adding detail, adding texture, adding emotion. I feel like what you're so good at is the soundscape that you are creating creates that emotion, creates that texture, especially in Out of Death. I mean, it really is like you've gotten, and the thing that I really
available
admire
in
about
stores now. Should we do a commercial break now? Available in stores now.
Yes, and in theaters everywhere. All right, but really, I mean, I saw your movie, and I'm so impressed that you made a movie during COVID, dude. I mean, I wrote a book. You know, a book you could write during. You know, you could be indoors and you could write a book, but like to go out and shoot a film with all of the restrictions, all of the difficulties of doing that, and I think that the level of kind of sparseness, the way that you sort of took the limitations and you made them suspenseful, you made them exciting, you made a film, you know, characters running through the woods. Like, it's like you took the things that you had to use in terms of a pandemic and you used them to tell a good story. So I think it's a really good example for people of like how to use what you've got to your advantage. You know, use what you know, use what resources you have, and telling your stories in that way. A lot of people sometimes feel like, well, you know, my stories aren't that interesting. People want to relate to those stories. I feel like when we talk specifically about our lives and our the specificity in our lives, people can appreciate that you have a unique experience, a unique point of view, and they want to hear your point of view. And they look for ways to insert themselves into it. Like, how can I relate to that? Is there something that I can connect to with what you're saying that, well, I've never gone through that specific experience, but I know what it's like to fall in love or fall out of love, or I know what it's like to get injured and to recover, or I know what it's like to be homesick, you know, like in your David Pogue story, you know?
Yeah, yeah. All this and more can be found in your copy of Story Well Told.
Yes. Which, by the way, if you click the link below, you can buy it right here from Books and Books. And I hope that you are all supporting independent bookstores. It is really a blessing that we have in our communities to have stores like Books and Books that are not only, of course, selling books, but creating these opportunities to, you know, to talk to and hear authors and creators speak in their creator spaces.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for watching so far. I'm being told that we have to cut to a commercial break, but we're gonna. I think we're gonna see what it is. I don't know what they want me to do, but we're gonna go ahead and cut to it now. 1 second here. Let's see what's on here. Hold on 1 second.
Cool.
Hi, Uncle Jack.
The old cabin looks good.
Country will be good for you. This lake has a way of healing things. Thanks for driving. Okay, bye. Bye.
I'm over this, Jimmy. Read the room. You know the protocol. That's not how we talk. That's not what we do.
Billy,
We have an unintended.
clean up your goddamn mess. Don't you make me have to come out there.
Please, I'm begging you. Please, please, please. You don't have to do this. I promise.
What are you waiting for, Billy? Don't move! On your knees. Now! I'm a cop. What happened?
She assaulted me. They're lying. She murdered someone.
This guy's a cop. He's not gonna shoot another cop. Billy, get my gun. Run!
We got a problem.
Put her out of her misery and then let's finish this. You hear?
I can hear you in there. Where's your friend?
Shannon, you can trust me. What we need is evidence.
I need my camera. Everything that you need to know is on there.
There's no quitting now. You understand?
Okay.
Bring me the girl, Jack. And you stay safe.
Uncle Jack!
I swear if you touch my niece.
Open the door, please help me!
We're in this together. It gets real tricky when family's involved, doesn't it, Jack?
I know men like you. You use people to get what you want. But I'm that chick you shouldn't have messed with.
Okay, and if you look super closely in the fine print, you might see my name all the way at the bottom.
Bravo.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's funny how they put the director's name literally at the bottom. That's like probably the best spot. It doesn't look like the best spot to me.
Yeah, I like it.
Whatever. Anyway, so that's the movie.
Javiana is here. Were you going to ask something?
Yes, so we're going to get into the Q&A portion of the night now.
Oh, cool.
And we do have some questions that are coming in. So if you guys are ready for that, I'm going to start asking them.
Yeah. Yes.
So the first question is, do you have any advice for someone who gets anxious speaking before a crowd?
Totally. I'll take this. Great question, Mom. That's from my mom. Hi, Mom. But I do. I've been asked this question a lot because I recently did an event, like an in-person event for the first time in 16 months, which was really exciting. It was just delightful and fun to do that in person again. And I got asked by somebody right there, they're like, "Oh, aren't you nervous?" And this is beforehand as everybody's kind of like making their way into the venue. And I have a thing that I like to do as a performer when I'm speaking in front of a crowd, and that is to be around the audience. Basically to go out and like talk to somebody that is there in the audience that I'm going to be talking to. I know a lot of people, they go backstage, they breathe, they stretch, they warm up. And really what I think they're doing is they're disconnecting themselves from the audience. Yeah. Whereas at least in the field that I'm talking about in terms of storytelling or public speaking, connecting with the people that you're talking to, I suggest that you connect with the people that you want to talk to. In other words, just talk to them and kind of get a vibe of like what's going on in their lives. Was the rain really bad? Was traffic getting into the parking lot? Like, are people stressed? Are people frustrated? Or they all seem to know each other? Like, what's going on with them? And the more that you can kind of be one of them, the closer I always feel connected to the audience and the more relaxed I feel. So when I have to go up and do what I'm going to do, I feel a camaraderie with the audience, and it helps me with relaxing myself when I speak in front of other people.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, then another question we have is, are you reading anything that's inspired you?
Always. I am reading the novelization. No, I'm kidding. I like to read the works of currently I'm reading like other storytellers' writings, and there is another Mango author named Kate Farrell who wrote a delightful book called Story Power that I'm really enjoying right now. So I just got her book, and so I'm enjoying that because it's really fun to see how different people approach the topic and the craft of storytelling, and so I'm really enjoying that. So Story Power by Kate Farrell is very inspiring.
Is there anything that you're reading right now, Mike, that you'd like to share with the audience?
I'm reading the book. I'm not even trying to plug this, but this is literally just sits on my coffee table. And when I get into my place where I want to just read, I basically pick it up, and I've been going through all these things, and there's scratching out some of these little exercises and just taking this in because one of the things now that I've got my first film going, I'm writing more, and I'm trying to and I've got some other scripted like stuff that I'm working on, and so I'm really trying to figure out what I could do. And this is like my best friend who wrote this from childhood, so it's like, why not take it from somebody you totally trust and I know who has been in the field and who's been working at this forever, and so nobody better, in my opinion, to learn from than someone like that.
Awesome. Yeah. Okay. Another question we have, Michael, so cool that you went to New World School of the Arts. Can you share with us a little bit about that time in your life?
Oh, wow. Yeah. It was an amazing time. I mean, Let me see if I can apply some of Corey's stuff here. You know, high school for everybody can be a daunting experience. You go to school, you're meeting new people, you're going through an awkward stage in your life, you're dealing with a bunch of hormones, and you know, it's high school for everyone is a different experience. But for me, high school was kind of a quantum leap going through from junior high in Miami, and which I think junior high is even a tougher time for a lot of people, a lot of young people, because you're really going through a lot of changes, and there's just this whole trying to go from being a kid to an adult. But fortunately, when I was able to go to New World, I kind of jumped straight from that to one of the first years that they had opened. It was actually the second year that they were open. So we didn't really have a campus. So we were on a college campus, downtown Miami-Dade Community College campus. And I know they have their own building now nearby, but we were literally running across campus with all of the other college students. And we just all of a sudden got thrown into adulthood. So that was a big responsibility. And it was, you know, it was amazing to be able to have that kind of freedom coming from something as, something like junior high school, where, you know, it's not unlike what feels like, you know, prison, you know, not that I speak from experience, but it is, you know, junior high can feel like that because everything is much more structured and dealing with bells and you're running around. But to go and be able to experience New World and the teachers and everybody that was there was an amazing experience. And being around other people, creative people from all over my district, where when I went to my junior high school, I was, you know, back in the day, you know, they call you the drama fag, or, you know, there were basically, it was, you know, people are, you know, calling you names. They you know, you were kind of the nerd or you know, and so they, you know, going from that experience to something where you felt like you were in a space with a lot of other creative people that just wanted to storytell and just wanted to perform and be on stage. It's an incredible, it was an incredible gift and incredible honor. And then, and so, yeah, I loved New World, and, you know, props to my people in Miami.
Very well told. That was very well told. I know you're trying to apply something. And I actually just want to add one little appendix to that story. I remember going to New World. I went to school with you. I came down to visit.
Oh, okay.
In upstate New York. I remember going to school and being, I mean, my one time on campus with you, I didn't even realize that it was on a college campus, but I remember the feeling of that. I think creative spaces are what we make of them, but also finding your family, finding your creative center and finding your tribe really opened you up and inspired you. And I remember the films that you would make with your high school friends to, you know, Boys of Summer, or the soundtracks to Chess, or whatever it was, whatever music inspired you at the time. You used that, you made your own movies and found your voice, like experimented. And the more we experiment, the more we try things, the more we're going to find the ways that we communicate and tell our stories better.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Okay, and then another
summer, I guess I can't believe that. That's funny because Russell Schweidel, our friend, mentioned that I had played this video at summer camp, which I never didn't know that I even had done that. Mm-hmm. But I was making films when I was in junior high school, and little films. So I've always had a passion for it. And my actor, my best friend who I was doing all these little things with, who was always my actor, he went on to become a producer, and he's actually the producer of my movie now. And produced The Irishman and Lone Survivor and all of these big movies. So, you know, we're all Miami boys, and it all started just in Kendall, just with a camera and a backpack and a battery pack and a whole thing over here and 2 decks and me pressing buttons to try and, you know, edit stuff together. And that, you know, we were just doing our thing. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of storytelling, and the medium of being able to use video now and being able to craft videos and having that tool inside of everyone's hands on a cell phone is an incredible thing. And I have my nephew, who's a very talented young filmmaker, Hudson Flynn, my sister's son. I mean, he's been making movies on his phone for several years, and so the tools are there now for everybody to use. Just get out and make something, and I think over time, you'll find your own little voice in what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so another question we have is, if you had to boil it down to a couple of essential rules, what's the key to telling a great story?
Beautiful. My answer to this question is, I mean, a lot of people have their sort of definition of what a story is. Mine is quite simply that a story is a telling or retelling of a story in which something changes. There is some consequence at the end of the story. If you have a story and nothing is different at the end of the story than the beginning of the story, it's not a story. Something needs to be fundamentally changed in the story. It doesn't have to be a big change. It could be something, it could be an internal change. It could be going from not liking this to liking this, or it could be from not, or from some behavior that you follow in your life to a different behavior. As long as there's some change, then that qualifies it as a story. That doesn't necessarily make it a good story, but that's, I think, a qualification that we make. And so advice that I give to people about, like, well, how do I know, like, if it's a true story, how do I know, like, what, well, I don't know what changed. Like, my life, I'm this many years old. I don't know where that started or where that ended. And what I often do is write almost in reverse. Like, I know what the punchline of my story is, right? I know what the end of the story is.
Yeah.
So I can look, how can I reverse engineer that now back to, go ahead.
That makes it feel very simple, I think, for people. Yeah. I think it makes that very digestible when you're saying, let's start with what the learn is, what's the lesson, what's the moral, what's the punchline, and then just work your way backwards. And it takes a lot of pressure off, because you can think about that even in us doing our conversations. Like, I think that's probably something that I'll be a takeaway for me now, is just, take a moment, think about where am I going to land, and then start back and knowing where the landing point is, and you'll find it after that. You'll get there.
Yeah. The first story in your story well told is about a time where I was dropping my kids off at school, and I got punched in the face by a mom at the school. Another kid's mom punched me in the face, right? So that was sort of the inciting incident of the story that I started the book. And in the crafting of that story, as I do in the book, you sort of see like how I go through trying different versions of that story. Like, I tell a version, but I also talk about, well, what's my son's memory of that same thing? Because he was sitting right next to me when I got punched. And how does he tell the story? And how do other people, like, how do stories change? How do stories change over time? So, just to wrap up back to what your question was, is having a simple fundamental understanding of what the change in the story is, and then to make it good, letting those colors, those details, and really resonate in there. And there are some exercises that the book has that you can use and apply to your stories to kind of awaken that and inspire those details.
Yeah, and I'm gonna pull the book up for just a second here, and chapter 1, why storytelling. I love this first line, which is basically, it says, Friday, 7:42 a.m. I got punched in the face in front of my daughter's school by another kid's mom. And that's how it starts. And what I love about that is that you jump right to a scenario that kind of throws people into a state of kind of like, okay, there's a story about to be told here. I don't know what it is, but it's a little crazy. And I think I did the same thing too in the idea of starting my movie off with, giving the people what they want. You got Bruce Willis holding a gun. Okay. But then we slowly pull back, and who's he holding a gun on? 2 cops. And he's not in any cop's clothes. So you're wondering, why is he holding a gun on 2 police officers? Yeah. And now there's a story that we need to know about. Mm-hmm. And it's very similar. You kind of could tease out that bit of what the conundrum is without really, and then people want to buy in and understand what that is. So I think that's a really great tool for storytelling.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we have a few more questions left. And so the next question is, who are some of the best storytellers, people you admire, or influences?
Always a very difficult question to answer because it's like I'm influenced by so many people and so many creators. I mean, I'm influenced by my children are some of the best, like creative influences on my life as a parent. I'm influenced by my parents who, in the ways that I've heard stories told my whole life, has influenced the way that I've told stories, right? I'm, of course, influenced by authors, filmmakers, musicians, composers, street performer. Like there have been countless influences in my life. But one thing, just to make it personal, an observation that my brother recently made, which I really agree with, which is that my mom is a great raconteur. Like something happens to I just came home from a trip to Rochester where I grew up, and I got to actually spend time with my family for the first time in 16 months. And my mom has this beautiful ability to take what's happening in her life, what's happening with her friends or whatever's happening, and to spin them into stories. And they're full of conflict, and they're full of villains, and they're full of heroes, and they're full of, people that were wronged and justice being served or not. And the amazing thing, though, of watching the way my mom does this is that she, of course, tells these stories to not just to us, but like I'll hear her on the phone with her friends, and she'll tell effectively the same story to somebody else, but she's adjusting and adapting the way that she's telling the story based on maybe what they're saying back to her or how they're reacting to her, which is, I think, a very human instinct, is that we tell stories often over and over. And the way that we calibrate and actually improve on our stories sometimes is not through writing them, but is through telling them and hearing what are people interested, what are people asking questions about, what do people want to know more about, helps us with the telling or the retelling of those stories. Much less Mike, I'm sure when you were pitching this movie, like you had to calibrate the pitch and make the short version and make the longer version and pitching it to the actors and to the, you're always retelling a story, and you have to find like what's the best way of telling it, of opening that up. I know I pivoted away from the question of who my influences are, but really my mom and dad were some of the biggest influences on my story.
I'm gonna give my dad some love on that too, because he loves to tell stories. He's got about 5 of them, but he tells them all very well, and he, and I think he forgets that we've all heard them. Because we hear a lot of the same ones over and over again these days. But yeah, and I mean, in terms of, I'll just throw in some things for like in the film world. I mean, obviously my movie is very influenced by some of my favorite storytellers, which are like the Coen brothers and, Quentin Tarantino, and I love Jim Jarmusch and people who really just kind of focus in on characters and character development, which we really didn't get too deep into. But it is a very important part of storytelling and understanding what the point of view is of that story that's being told from that person, and why they have a unique point of view, and what in ourselves are we seeing in their uniqueness, which is part of what kind of really connects us to people, other people, especially when we're watching stories on film or on TV.
Nice.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay, so we have one last question, and then we're gonna wrap it up. So the last question.
Can we get a name from who's asking the question? Do we know? Mom again?
We don't know about this one. It's not. I don't think it's.
Mom? Is that your mom, Corey? Okay.
They're all from my mom.
No, they're not. So this next question says, Corey, do you enjoy working in both the book world and the film world?
I love it. I love the book world. I am new to the book world, and Mango Publishing, I just need to sing their praises up and down because they've been amazing allies and helpers and helping me navigate, first-time author, taking a chance on me and navigating just the learnings of how to do it, much less in the middle of a pandemic when you can't do book events in person, and helping to connect me with you guys and that sort of thing. And the of course, the thing about the book world that's sort of magical is that you're creating this thing that is experienced by so many people that I don't know. I think in the sense of like storytelling, very often I'm like in front of an audience and they are hearing my story, and not that I know everyone that comes to every show that I'm at, but it's like there's a personal connection, and I'm like, talking to and hearing from people that have like learned from the book and like taken it into their storytelling, and that's really cool and really powerful. The film world is really fascinating to me because that was kind of my first love in a sense. I always really loved the power of the image that could tell a story and that could take an audience somewhere, and making my own films and then working for George Lucas for, more than 12 years and working for Disney and Jim Henson Productions, like really working on Star Wars movies and these very iconic movies. It's amazing to be a part of that kind of story that touches so many people in so many ways. So, what I really found in that work, and working in that world too, is that while I was telling those stories and being a part of that world, I was also, just like at New World and in other parts of our lives, every community that we're a part of, we meet other individuals and creative people, most of whom have their own thing, their own book that they're working on, their own movie that they're trying to make, their own animated series or whatever that is. So I look back across my career at the people that I've met and celebrate everybody's successes. My bunk buddy from 1982 who, has a movie that he's directed, or, the people that I collaborated with on ideas for movies that I got to watch made in theater. So it's just a joy.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Especially Star Wars. I'm such a huge fan, so I love it.
There is, I think, a story in the book about a scene that I ruined in Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
So
I'm definitely going to have to check it out. Thank you.
One of the first things I did was ruin Star Wars, but you'll have to read the book to find out.
I'll find that out.
Well, another great opening line for a chapter of a book, of the next chapter of his book. I'm just going to say one more thing, just because this is Corey and I have been friends for I'm going to give away our name, about 40 almost 40 years.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a long friendship to have, and we've obviously gone on, done our thing, gone our ways. But we've both, I think, when you're a creative person or you have a creative desire or a creative streak in you, you want to try different things. You want to do different things. And Corey and I have both done a lot of different things in our lives. And I think for anybody who's watching this is that, it's important to do everything, do it all, try everything, because life is short. And if you have the opportunity to do something that may be a little bit outside of your comfort zone or a little bit left of who you were told to be, it really doesn't matter, because I'm just making my first film now, and in my, middle-aged years, Corey's got his first book coming out. We've done a multitude of other things, but it's always great to do something for the first time. No matter how old you are, no matter what you've done in the past, no matter where you are in your life, try something new, do a first of something. And I think that, you really can't lose, because when you do something for the first time, as we all know, you can, it can be a very beautiful and amazing experience that you'll never forget.
And if it's not, it could be a good story.
Yes, very well said. Thank you so much for sharing that. But thank you guys so much for joining us tonight for this event. And I just want to remind everyone that they can buy a copy of Your Story Well Told by hitting the green button at the bottom. We can ship it out to you directly from Books and Books, and we appreciate it, and everyone should be reading this book. So thank you so much. I
believe, because I sent you guys book plates, I think they're signed books too if you ship it out. Yeah.
Yes. So that's good to look out for. So thank you guys so much again for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Corey, for having me on. It's great to be here.
Great to see you again. Yeah. And congratulations on Out of Death.
Yes, congratulations to both of you.
available now on your favorite streaming video channel of choice.
Amazing.
Amazing.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
guys.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.